Mr. Darshan Sangha, thank you very much for joining me today. For those people that sort of don't know you and your background, what is it that you do on a day-to-day basis?
David, first of all, can I thank you for inviting me along to your virtual in conversation chat through Kapuffle. And yeah, so a little bit about myself, an introduction. I run my own business. I'm an independent small to medium enterprise company called Free Oaks based in Chigwell. It's a family-run independent business. I also have the opportunity of being the ARLA regional executive for the last 8 years now for the Essex region. And for my sins, if you want to call that, I'm also a district councillor in Epping Forest District Council, where I also take on the responsibility of being a cabinet member, one of the executive members of the council making key decisions. But I'm more passionate about being a working practitioner for the last 22 years.
It's interesting. You've obviously sort of gravitated towards politics in one form or another. And where does the sort of professional and personal boundaries lie? How much friction is there, Darshan, between sort of leading a conservative councillor lifestyle together with running a business and also balancing the needs and wants of an organization like ARLA?
So, I mean, it's a very, very good question, David. It's something that I've been often asked in the past, and is there any conflict being a part of one particular colour rosette of a party and being a working practitioner? I always go back to basics. What activity in my life brings food to the table and keeps a roof over my head? And that's what I do for a living as a working practitioner. My loyalty has always been with the business I run and also the industry that I belong to. But it is very important to separate the two. And I'm one of those people, if you want to make a change, sometimes it's better to be inside the tent rather than outside the tent, if you understand what I'm saying with that analogy.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. If we talk about this election now, the ARLA election, this is not your first rodeo. It's not your first time of sort of going for it. What number are we up to now? Are we about 4?
No, we've gone to the membership. This is the third time.
Third time.
The membership, yeah. So
and so there needs to be a bit of tenacity there to sort of keep going and keep fighting through the rejection. Can't be. I mean, I know this as an estate agent. We hate that. We live with a fear of rejection, so we hate that sort of feedback. But what is it that keeps you going? There are obviously some great ARLA candidates out there. You've got the people that have taken up the role that were successful in previous elections. I think it's fair to say that they're very dedicated and very good people that bring a lot to the table. But what is it about what Darshan has to offer that you feel ARLA needs to take?
I think, look, what I want to really say at this point is that I have a lot of respect for my colleagues at ARLA, all the regional executives, all 30 of them. They do a fantastic job. Everyone's got qualities. Everybody's got something different to offer. I feel I have something very special to offer. Going back to my first statement when I said that when you want to make change, you have to work, sometimes be inside the tent. I suppose I have that special sort of a set skill that I'm involved in politics. Whatever we say about politics, it does run with everything that's happening around us. And I just feel like I have that extra edge where I could possibly help shape the future of our industry, given the fact that over the last few years we've just been bombarded with nothing but backdoor legislation, and as we head now towards regulation.
It strikes me as odd that we're having that chat, because if you would have said to me sort of 10 years ago I'd be speaking to a Conservative councillor about who might be willing to be critical about a Conservative government and their effect on the property market in terms of legislation. The reason I would say that is that it would make sense that a Conservative government would be more pro-business, that they'd be more pro-landlords and homeowners, and it doesn't seem to be that way at all. It just seems that we've had year after year of changes and legislation that has been introduced to us, and really, when we look back on recent history, we probably come to remember people like Tony Blair's government as being far more hospitable to businesses, and that perhaps a centrist left government is the type that would help a property industry to thrive. And yet here we are now in 2022. Yes, we've had some absolutely unpredicted and unprecedented events with the pandemic, but notwithstanding that, it seems that this government is hell-bent on making life difficult for our sector.
Look, I mean, I like you said, I am a Conservative district councillor, and I don't agree with everything the government does. I mean, you haven't got to agree with every single thing they do. The one thing I will say is that there doesn't seem to be any stability in their appointments, one after the other with housing ministers. I mean, we've just got another housing minister now, Stuart Andrew, who's now been appointed. Hopefully, at some point, a bit like me, I keep coming back, keep trying. We'll probably find one housing minister that will eventually listen to what we're asking them, to do in terms of helping us shape the industry. Yeah, I mean, the Conservatives don't. I really do feel at the moment in time, I have to be very careful, but I'm quite outspoken. If I think something's not right, it's not right. And I do feel that over the last few years, we've had nothing but legislation on top of legislation on top of legislation. And they're asking us to do stuff, but they're not prepared to regulate the industry. So
so there seems to be that hesitancy as well to what I would say invest in the industry as well and sort of make those changes. A lot of the rhetoric and the sort of the idea behind some of the legislative changes makes sense. A lot of this is stuff that has been waiting for years. Do we want better standard of housing? Yes, we do. Do we expect private landlords to pick up the tab for that? Well, no, not when you've taken away every other perk that they used to have. So you can't have it both ways. But it just seems to be that, and especially I think if we were to talk politics for a second, the way that a Conservative government is able to get away with making such changes like that is that during the Corbyn era, they had a very left-leaning government that would not, opposition government, if you like, that would not for a minute have taken the landlord side. So really all the changes they made were pretty much unopposed. And so you had this sort of voice of consensus within the House. And I wonder, and this is the question I ask everybody at ARLA and Propertymark and continue to ask, how much attention, Darshan, are they paying to ARLA as the voice of the industry?
We've got 17,000 plus membership throughout the whole of the United Kingdom. We are representing the voice of all small to medium and corporate letting agents out there. Are they listening to us? Well, I think they are starting to listen to us. In terms of, if you look at the percentages of who gives them the housing stock at the moment, I think we give a very big proportion of stock so that they could that people could be housed. If you look at the stats at the moment, why are they afraid to regulate the industry? And why are they bringing all this legislation in through the back door? Look, simply put, we don't have the housing stock at the moment, but there's a huge demand out there. And everything they're doing is trying to stall the whole process of evicting tenants. Because if a tenant is evicted, they become homeless. The homelessness then becomes a major big issue for all local authorities up and down the country. They then have to rehouse those people. And if they can stop and stall that procedure where a tenant is evicted, then they've got a control over the whole situation, the overarching situation with tenants being evicted. I've been a member for 22 years now with ARLA Propertymark, and the one thing that we've always wanted is regulation. We wanted the industry to be regulated and for us to be taken seriously. A 53-page dossier was actually put together by Lord Richard Best, and his recommendations where ARLA Propertymark were a 20% stakeholder within AEA and us together, sitting around the table and helping shape what would be a regulatory body in the UK. But the government simply don't get it. I'm sorry to say this, they just don't simply get this, because I'm going to be critical here, because they need to understand that we are actually playing a very, very important role in helping them where they've got to build something, a huge number of houses to meet the demand. We're providing them that, but they also need to listen to us as well in terms of from an industry's point of view. You know, don't make life difficult for us. Don't take those tax breaks they've done with the landlords. You know, the Tenants Fee Act, I mean, that was a big blow for the industry, a very big blow. Yeah, in terms of just to answer your question, I don't think the government gets it.
I think some of the changes in the way that we find out about it, almost through that back door or secondhand sometimes, it belies a certain viewpoint of our industry and how highly we are regarded. We're not regarded highly enough by government. It is clear that they're not backing us as an industry enough. And I don't mean that in any critical sense for the people at Propertymark and ARLA and NEA. I think they are working their absolute socks off to do whatever they can to raise the profile of that organization. I've always said that an organization like ARLA, whether you're a member of it or not, it has a responsibility to speak for all of us, whether we're members of the organization or not, because you do represent the better interests, if you like, of our the best interests of our industry. The issue being with government is that sometimes what we contribute to the economy is not felt enough somehow. The house builders are the people that get the preferential say. They're treated very, very well by the government, and there have been and we're not going to name names here, but there were previous housing ministers that are no longer in their posts that clearly sent us all back to work last year during the height of the pandemic. We all got sent back to work, but the message was clear that they were there sending us back to work to keep the nation moving, but it was to keep the builders building. It was all about development and house builders rather than our day-to-day industry. What change do you think needs to be made for government to sort of sit up and take us as seriously as in terms of lobbying as any other part of industry?
I think if I can just take a step back to June 2019, the Tenants Fee Act came into play, and we had templates that were made, a toolkit that we prepared at ARLA Propertymark, which is a brilliant idea, that we as regional executives were given to give to members, ARLA members, to then reach out to local MPs and to say, look, this is how the Tenants Fee Act is going to affect our industry. And the one thing that came out from that exercise was that a lot of the MPs didn't get it. They didn't understand what the Tenants Fee Act, what implications it would have on our industry. And that's the unfortunate thing that I'm about to reveal today through Kerfuffle, is that a lot of the local authority members of the council, councillors, including and MPs as well, they're not experts. They don't understand how our industry works. And it's good to see people like Tim Douglas, who's our Chief Policy Officer, who's also a councillor, by the way.
Yeah.
And he goes out and reaches out to Parliament, and he tries to share with them how things work. But a lot of the MPs, and this will resonate with a lot of our members that will listen to this interview, that a lot of the MPs didn't even know, they don't understand any of it. Honestly, they just don't get it. the research is in the background.
But and I also think that sort of the musical chairs that go on. I mean, look, at the moment you've got a government that is clearly in, and it doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum you stand on. At the moment, we have a bit of a leadership crisis here in this country, and I know that's a broad statement, but we are clearly not happy. And we don't seem to have any sort of flow at the moment. The government seems to be just putting out fires, starting its own fires, and then putting it out very quickly. The opposition party looks, should have had a chance now, but really are not cloaking themselves with any sort of glory either. If I was a young person, my kids, for instance, if they're thinking about whether or not it's worthwhile getting involved in politics, I don't think it speaks to them in any way.
I think what you just said is absolutely right. It doesn't matter what party is in government. It's the fact they have that hunger to be in power. Now, in terms of, if you look at legislation that's been put through Parliament for our industry, a lot of it is actually more to do with winning votes, more to do with winning votes. So when they scrapped the Tenancy Fee Act, when the Tenancy Fee Act came in, it was about the removal of our tenants' fees that we charge. And legitimately, we do a lot of work. It's not just a photocopying exercise. We have to do a lot of work in the background. And if you think about it, we act like Her Majesty's tax inspectors. We look at we're border agency officials, we're local authority enforcement officers, making sure that there are no departures from the health, housing, safety rating systems, which is the new the Homes Fitness for Human Habitation Act 2018. Those are the things when tenants make a complaint, goes back to an enforcement officer, then come out to a property check. But we have to make sure that the property is fit and is of a decent standard as well, which is now being talked about. But when they put legislation together, it gets cross-party support. It's driven, the horse and carriage is driven right through Parliament, because they know that this will give them votes, because people will vote for the party in power at that time, because that is something that's saving the tenant money. So therefore, that's going to give them the extra votes. But they just don't get it because the impact it has on the industry as well. But unfortunately, government of the day, whatever it is, will actually always be looking at how many votes can we pick up.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic, really, because you look at the legacy of some very strong conservative leaders. Someone like Margaret Thatcher probably did more for home ownership in the UK. I mean, very controversial subject that a lot of people were not happy with her policies, but there has been a drive to put people to make an Englishman's castle his home, and to put people in a position of ownership. Do you feel that we're doing enough to sort of encourage then tenants these days to get into a position where they can also afford a home of their own? Do you think there's a government want or need for that?
It's an interesting thing you bring up, because yesterday I was actually listening to a webinar that was put together by David Cox, and he spoke about the government's initiative, or their drive, the levelling up, the department for levelling up. They're saying we want to go from generation rent to generation buy.
Right.
That's what the government is trying to do, is to try and get more people to be homeowners as opposed to renting. But in terms of course, everybody would love to have their own home, if that makes sense. But not everybody is fortunate to be in that position. So therefore, we as a private rented sector, we have to supply the much needed the demand for housing. And I think the government needs to wake up, smell the coffee, and look at what we're actually doing. I mean, if you ask the local MP anywhere in the country how much they know about the private rented sector, I don't think they don't have much idea, really. They really don't get it, honestly. Yeah. And I'm going to be outspoken about this, but they don't get it. I know I asked a local an MP around where I am, and they didn't understand what it was all about. So until we get that right, we'll be banging our head against the wall.
But it's not for lack of trying. I mean, you mentioned David Cox there earlier. So you know, ARLA, Propertymark, NAA, whatever we're calling it today, there have been some real powerhouses that have worked very hard for that organization, David Cox being one of them, who have all tried to petition government, have all tried to sort of be at the forefront. And we as the rest of the industry keep getting told, listen, we can't tell you about half the things we're involved in because, you know, they need to be confidential. That is the way that politics works. We cannot publicly talk about the sort of things that we're doing behind closed doors. But let me assure you, we're doing an awful lot for you guys, and we're trying our very best. What I'm trying to say here, Darshan, is it's not for lack of trying. So, you know, better people than either you or I have come before us and have tried to affect that change. When will the government wake up and realize it? What does it take? Do we need to put a metaphorical gun to their head? Does there need to be a threat? Do we need to sort of unionize almost so that we are holding the government to ransom in some way? How does it work?
Okay, so again, that's a good question, and I'm going to answer this in two folds. First of all, you have to understand how government works. Okay, you've got to understand how things happen in the corridors of power in Parliament. So you've got elected members for various different areas of the country, MPs. Okay, the MPs actually don't make the decisions, believe it or not. I will say it again, MPs don't actually make any decisions, and I'm sure Timothy Douglas, who's our Chief Policy Officer, will actually nod and say, yeah, it's right. It's the researchers, it's the people in the background that do the research and come up with
the policies,
with the answers and the policies. And it's those policies that they either agree with or tweak with. I mean, as a cabinet member, I can tell you that a lot of the decisions in council are made because our officers are paid officers, and they go out and they do the research and they bring it to me. I either approve it or I say, no, go back and let's have some more meat and bone. MPs in Parliament are of the same workings. You're going back to why am I interested in going for it for the third time? Because I believe in something. I have a strong, passionate belief that we have to make changes, okay, about how government listens. I have people that I know in Parliament, and I've got the government's ear. I understand the process, okay? Just by shouting and putting stuff out that, you know, we're being mistreated and the private rented sector isn't being treated fairly, won't go anywhere. It's got to start from grassroots. It's got to start from the people that make the policies. It's the policy makers that we need to get to. David Cox done an amazing job because he used to talk to those policymakers, and I think he still does, and that's why he's got some great webinars. And Timothy Douglas is another policymaker for ARLA Propertymark, and I'm so pleased he's in that position because he gets it. He knows how to operate. He's a smooth operator, and I would like the opportunity in my position to also use my resources as well to get the government's ear and make sure they listen to our concerns. It's only through listening, the researchers, the policymakers in the background, that will then put it in front of a local member of Parliament and say, this is what ARLA Propertymark is about, this is what NAA is about, this is how it's going to have an impact on the people that provide us the properties. These are landlords that are investing their hard-earned money, buying multiple properties and giving it to the private rented sector to rent out, because what that's doing, and they need to get it, is that they're helping the government, where the government's trying to build more houses, we're helping them along that line. And that's where I think it's important that we reach out to the right people. You could be barking up the wrong tree. If you're not barking up the right tree, you might be wasting your time completely.
Let's look at some of the changes that have occurred at ARLA Propertymark over the past few years, I think it's fair to say it is coming away from being that stuffy boys' club that it was once perceived as being. And I think it's got a very young and dynamic crowd there. Your regional reps seem to be very outspoken. Everybody is a big sort of cheerleader for the industry and upping standards, and it's great. And there feels, from somebody who's sat perhaps on the outside looking in, it feels that there is a sort of a movement for change. You've got some great sort of young figures coming through, and I applaud this because I know how hard it is to get younger people who are busy and live busy lives to give of their own time to leading organizations. So I applaud what's happened there. We're starting to see a bit of a mix in terms of equality as well. So you've got women playing a very prominent part in the organizations as well. And that feels like it's evening out. We still, as an industry, and this is as a whole, it's not an ARLA problem, but this is an industry problem. We are not as good about celebrating our ethnic diversity because it does exist, but we never seem to see it. So what changes would you like to see, Darshan, happen in order to sort of level the playing field? Because we need to make our organizations truly representative.
Yeah, I mean, again, if I take you slightly back, 22 years ago, when I joined ARLA at the time, I used to be the guy that used to sit right at the back of the conference because it was, let's face it, there was less of the same color of people as me, and I used to be frightened to even say anything. I should attend them because I should love attending them. And as years have progressed, that dynamic has changed, and I think 8 years ago, when I became a regional executive, I realized the association was going in the right direction. I'm very well outspoken. I will share, and I will celebrate, and I will congratulate, and I will do everything I can to make sure ARLA Propertymark is heard and do my part as a regional exec. Quality, yeah. I mean, we've got more ladies. I mean, this industry is, I think, more top driven with more ladies now working in the industry then, so naturally there will be that thing where we want more ladies to be more active. In terms of ethnic diversity, I think we do need to see a bit more. I'm not going to lie to you, because I think apart from myself and Dharmesh, who's the other regional exec,
yeah,
we're the only two Asians, but that's you know, I think ARLA run a very equal platform when they interview people. But we need more people to step up to the mark. If that's what makes sense. You've only just got to look at the cabinet of Boris Johnson, and you'll see that the number 2 there is Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
And you've got Priti Patel as well, and you've got business secretaries as well. So I think the association get it. They understand that we need to have diversity as well. But we also understand that it's got to be talent as well. It's people have got to have the credentials as well. And it will be an absolute pleasure, David. I say this very cautiously, to be the very first British Asian to be to go up through the ranks for the presidential role.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And yeah, I think you're right. I think it's about. I think every organization needs to sort of look at where it's recruiting its members from, and understand whether or not it's being as inclusive as it can be and as welcoming as it can be. Because you're right, but walking into a room and being the only person in that room who isn't like everybody else, it's professionally very, very daunting. And there have been times where you have to have immensely broad shoulders in order to push forward within such a structure. So and I, most of the people that I speak to, in fact all the people I speak to, they are lovely people, and I don't think there is that old-fashioned attitude there anymore. But it's about what we can do in order to welcome people in, and to almost, what do they call it in America? They call it affirmative action, don't they? It's where we promote people to positions because we need to see those we need to break those glass ceilings a little bit. And so it would be interesting to see what the industry does with that in the years to come. So talk to me about your first year then as president, when you finally get up there. I know there's a structure. So if you get elected now as vice president, you then go on to be president. What is the work of a vice president? What is the work of a president? And as you said, the MPs don't make the decisions. The prime minister, to a certain extent, doesn't make the decisions. He's the figurehead. Who does make the decisions at ARLA? What do those figureheads do? Is it just an office and a title that is nice to have, or can it really deliver real change?
So in terms of, just want to take you back to when you talked about a little bit about young people coming in and more young talent coming in. I really welcome that. I think it's really good to have fresh blood. It's nice to have people, and it's good to see that there's a lot of interest as well. But who said you have to agree with every single body? All 30 reps have to agree with each other. But it's about being professional. It's about rising above challenges. It's about working together collectively as a team and moving forward. I think I shared this anecdote with David Votter this morning. I sent him an email, a text message this morning. I said, somebody once said, if you want to go fast, you go alone. And if you want to go far, which is what our association wants to do, you go with others. So it's about every single thing. It's not about titles, David. It's not about, vice president or president-elect or regional. It's about us working as a team. It's about collective forward thinking about the association. We have some very, very important years ahead of us, especially with government changes and etc. With ROPA on the horizon as well. The association needs now to shift up a gear and work together for the best for our membership. In terms of what's expected of a vice president, and like you said, are the decisions made? It's an ambassadorial role. It's an ambassadorial role. And in order for somebody to have respect as an ambassador, they need to be also somebody that's liked and somebody who talks sense. They need to resonate, have some sort of common ground with that person. Yeah. What is that person's beliefs? What does that person believe in? Does he have that burning desire to work with an association for the betterment of his membership? It's a membership organization. I think being the vice president of ARLA Propertymark is about working with people. This industry is a people's industry that's driven by people, for people. So whatever you do, the first rule of the thumb is it's not about you personally, it's about working together as a team. And having, you have to gain respect. You can't buy respect, you have to gain respect. And I think in 22 years of my working practitioner's life, I think I've made some good friends during my journey. Not everybody's going to be your friend, but you know what? You have to just move forward with your life. It's like with council work. You're not going to be friendly with every single councillor, but you have to rise above. So for me, the first year would be is solidifying and actually endorsing and working together very closely with all regional execs and with the board as well, the board of directors. Again, it goes back to, do I get it? Or do I understand the nuts and bolts of an association? That's really, really fundamentally important. So I get it, because there's the board of directors for ARLA, there's the board of directors for NAA, then there's the Propertymark board of directors as well. But it's about feeding in to the ARLA board of directors as a consultee, and then also that fed into the Propertymark board of directors that make the decisions. But it is important, the person that's the figurehead, that's the ambassador, that's the face that people look up to, they can resonate and say, yeah, that person stands for that. That's what I think the first year will be about.
And do you think it's clear because obviously you've had a couple of attempts at other elections, but obviously, and you're coming up for this one now, do you think therefore it's clear to the members of ARLA, the people that will be casting their votes, what it is that Darshan stands for?
And I think that's really important. It's about education. It's about communication as well. It's about communicating what I stand for, my beliefs, I think I'm reaching out through social media as well as during the conference as well. I go out and talk to people, and it's just getting across what you stand for the association. I've seen the association evolve over the years for the better. I can only share that journey and say where we need to take it as well. So where we have been, where we are now, and where we want to be. And if I can share that with the wider membership, I think I will get their support.
Yeah.
Because I'm not just somebody who's just plucked out of thin air or just joined the association just because I want a title. It's, for me, it's not about a title. It's about what I can help deliver as an ambassador.
Interesting. Okay, Darshan, maybe taking a slightly different look at things in terms of one of the things I've always found very challenging as an estate agent is juggling roles inside of work, outside of work, personal roles at home, and whatever you might have. We have a lot of responsibility, and estate agency tends to be an all-consuming profession that if you can't just give it a little bit of your time, it eats all of your time and it consumes a lot of your life. Do you feel and some of the I'll share with you the personal challenges I've had. I've chaired different charities and housing associations outside of work as an estate agent, and it's difficult to balance it. It's difficult to have the time, and it's difficult to give everybody the attention that they need and deserve, and also run a successful business at the same time. You can do it, but you'll be working flat out and you'll run yourself down after a while. So how do you cope with it? How do you plan to cope with it? Because this is something that I reckon all politicians must, they have to juggle a number of different roles. So at what point do we put down the estate agency and pick up ARLA? At what point do we put down ARLA and pick up the estate? Do you see what I'm saying? There's a lot of pulls and draws on your time and your attention. How do you manage that as an individual?
So one of the things that I've been able to acquire a skill for is good time management skills. I've been a self-employed person for like 22 years. So I don't work. I'm unemployable, by the way, David. You couldn't employ me. Honestly, you couldn't, because once you're self-employed, you never can work for somebody else as an employee. For me, it's about time management skills. I mean, I attend lots of meetings. I've been chair of various planning meetings, etc., and committees and all that. It's about good time management skills. It's about having a good team of people that work with you as well. But you're right. There does come a time when there's a bit of a, you burn out as well. And it's what you want to achieve. You've got to seek within yourself, your inner self. What is it you want to achieve? What does Darshan Sangha want to achieve by giving up his time, by being in an ambassadorial role for an association that's got a lot to give to 17,500 members? For me, it's the satisfaction that I can help be part of a journey that will take an association for where it was 22 years ago to where it will be, and hopefully it'll be taking part as the regulatory body for the UK. So we'll be the regulators for the overarching sort of
it seems to be, do you know what that is? It's very important. If you were to talk to people who are not members of your organization and ask them what it is that ARLA concerns itself with mostly, and they'll say, well, they do an awful lot of prattling on about ROPA and about regulation, and it would seem that they're itching to be the ones that get put in that driving seat to regulate. I'll be honest, when I think about other bodies like the RICS that I'd actually like to talk about in a second, but when we talk about that, I don't see the RICS as representing the residential estate agents out there. I think that ARLA and Propertymark do a much better job of that. And I can't think of any other organization that would do it as well and would be as representative. So as far as I'm concerned, you can have it. But it is something that you guys are pushing for. It's something that you guys are sweating about. Where does the organization go if you don't get it? If
so this is why David, you pick up on some very important points there. So in terms of, if you think about it, and I mentioned this already, and it is at the forefront of my mind and my vision for the organization is that we need now to start planning forward about where the association needs to be. We don't know when ROPAs are going to be coming, but it will be coming. There are recommendations within that 43-page dossier. But we, just to let you know, and I'll speak to David Water about this morning as well, we need to be telling our members what we're doing behind the scenes. They may not see what's happening, but in Arban House, there's a great team of people, and they are putting together all sorts of campaigns, how we're telling members what we're doing, and also how we're pushing forward for government to listen to what we want to be and where we want to be. It is fundamentally important that we get this position as the regulatory body. It is so important. We're doing everything the government wants us to do in terms of being a training provider, in terms of being, with reaching out to our members, with our ARLA helpline, the fact sheets. We're supporting our membership, and we're promoting the highest possible best letting practice that exceeds legal parameters as well. But it really, really is important. I can't think of anybody else that comes anywhere near ARLA Propertymark to be the regulator, but we must not be complacent at the same time as well. From my perspective, I will keep pushing because I know where this association, where the organisation has come from, and where it's going. It's going in the right direction, and we've got great leadership in Nathan Emerson, who sees it, he gets it. And the presidential team and the board of directors, we all get it. But it's now working with everybody's own abilities. Everybody's got the pluses and minuses as well. And everybody's got set skills as well. There's estate agents, there's letting agents.
Yeah.
I just want to bring the element of how politics work, and it's interesting how politics work.
There's always strength in numbers. And we consider ourselves to be significant, but in actual fact, there are only a very small number of, comparatively speaking, what is it, something like 28,000 branches altogether in terms of estate agents. There are very few of us. I mean, you've got, I think you came to talk to 17,000 members, if I'm not mistaken, overall. And that's great. And that's scraping together everybody from the sort of auction side of the businesses to residential sales and lettings. So it's quite a broad spectrum that you're going after. And you've got organizations like the RICS, which is a very closed shop. They don't even come into our field of vision. They consider themselves very separated from us plebs, if you like, in the residential property.
Can I just want to put just a point of order there, really, when we are called plebs, because plebs are the ones, and this will resonate with everybody that's listening to this, is we get a phone call, don't we? And there's a surveyor on the phone saying, hello, my name's Joe Bloggs, and I'm a surveyor. I've just surveyed a property you're renting. Could you tell us what rental it is? Well, we're giving them that information.
And therein lies the problem. So I guess that the problem I'm setting up here is that, yes, I as a working estate agent have to deal with a lot of surveyors on a day-to-day basis. I can't sell a house without a surveyor being involved. I've understood that as a hazard of my profession. I also know that they cannot come up with the figures that they need without me. So they accept that as a hazard of their profession. However, there seems to be a disconnect between the two sides. I mean, you've got this very you've got a body of professionals that again has had its own challenges recently at the RICS. We're not short of a scandal or two here and there, and clearly there've been leadership problems and so on. But it would make sense to me, Darshan, with the size of an industry that we're dealing with, if there would be some sort of a hookup and a link between organizations like ARLA, NAA, and the RICS, that we all get together and really sort of and make sure that the surveying side of our industry is serving the best interests of the agents, and vice versa. We all, it's a reciprocal world, you know, and it should be a symbiotic relationship.
It should, ideally, that should be the case, should it not? But if they're also going to be competing against us for the regulatory position, I'm not sure how that would work. But the one thing I will share with you, David, and that is, this is where I think ARLA Propertymark were in leaps and bounds, and they excelled in people's eyes about why we are the to-go organization. It was during the lockdown on the 23rd of March 2020, the whole country was put into lockdown, and the only people that actually reached out to its members through webinars, 30 plus webinars, was ARLA Propertymark. They gave that steer as to where as an industry where we sat with the lockdown and how they helped us, and they played a very pivotal role with the government in saying, you should allow us to come back. I know you said on the flip side that they wanted us to come back because they wanted us to keep building homes.
Yeah.
At the same time, we needed to provide a much needed service to our landlords, who, without us collecting the rent, because there was that little myth where tenants said, "Oh, that's it, lockdown, end of the world," and it was a serious thing because a lot of tenants didn't pay their rent. They stopped making any more payments. And so with ARLA coming out with their 30 plus webinars, giving us an update, what we found, David, was that a lot of people were joining these webinars that weren't actually members of ARLA Propertymark, and they wanted to tune in and find out from a professional body what to do, because nobody knew what to do. And yet we were able to demonstrate how strong we were as an organization and what we were doing to support our members. And we also said, well, if you're a new member, if you're not part of ARLA Propertymark, you can still join our webinar. And as a result, we had a lot more people joining the organization. That to me speaks volumes. Forget about, if you're talking about numbers and data, that itself says how we've now made a massive big impact during the lockdown, and we continue to move forward.
So in terms of structure, Darshan, for those people that don't know, and again, there are a lot of people that will watch or listen to this that are not ARLA or NAA members, and we may be confused. I think the Propertymark brand is now accepted as that's where the kind of branding went as an umbrella. Well, the relationship between the NAA, so you've got David Votter, who is coming in next as the president of ARLA. That is the residential letting side of the industry. In terms of the NAA, which was just general estate agency, seen as being more the sales side of our industry, you've got people like Nathan Emerson over there. What is the relationship? How involved do you get? I mean, I know you guys are together again tomorrow is it Birmingham or somewhere near there? So and that's great to hear that these in-person events are happening. But is there general consensus and collaboration between the two sides of the organization? How does it work?
Yeah, so when, like I said to you, when I was always part of ARLA Propertymark, and then there was that merger, we became Propertymark, so as one big umbrella, and with the two levels, so NAA and ARLA Propertymark, and they both work hand in hand. They do, really, because one, if you don't sell houses to landlords, you're not going to be able to find renters and people to rent the properties. So it's really important that we understand how each division works. And I think that is, at the moment, it seems to be it's working very well, where we understand how the other one works. So the left hand does know what the right hand is doing in this case, and we can also listen. I mean, in terms of, if you think about the NAA, I'm also a member of the NAA as well. So and as well as ARLA Propertymark as well. There are some common grounds like the National Crime Agency, the NCA. We get updates from how they operate and how that affects both estate agents and letting agents as well in terms of money laundering, etc. But yeah, I would say that things are progressing in the right direction, and I think we're coming together as Propertymark.
That's encouraging to hear. You've very kindly almost given me a whole hour of your time. So I'll ask you as a final question: if you could have an hour of anybody's time, either alive or dead, anybody that you could have a conversation with for an hour, who would it be?
I think it will be Her Majesty the Queen.
Really?
I would love to. I have a lot of time for the royal family, and I would say that she's been an outstanding ambassador for the whole of the United Kingdom, and I'll probably say to her, I'm a bit upset she's giving it to King Charles, because he should be, or Charlie, he should be Prince William. But I'm sure she's making the right decision.
So I think there's plenty of time for that still. There's plenty of time.
But yeah, now with Her Majesty the Queen, because I want to take it right back to, she probably doesn't get it, but she's the decision maker, the policy holder, the policy maker for the whole of the country, so whether it's Parliament or Prime Ministers or whatever. No, but all jokes aside, I have a lot of time for Her Majesty. I'm a true Brit, and it'd be great to be the first British Asian to be the president of ARLA Propertymark at some point.
Well, that'll be great. We're wishing you luck with your campaign. We're going to be speaking to other people that are going to be running as well, I'm sure, in the run up to when's the election? Is it July? Is it or
June?
June.
June.
Okay. At this stage, Darshan, do you know how many runners there are, or?
I don't know. I honestly don't. Look, I don't. With the official candidates and all that haven't been selected, so it wouldn't be fair to say. I'm only letting people know what my verdict is. It's only because of my last attempt, so I'm going again. And just because you don't get it the first time or the second time doesn't mean you're not going to be a great ambassador role for an organization, because some of the most successful prime ministers of the country have been not on their first attempt or the second attempt.
Well, Darshan, thank you very much for giving us your time and your viewpoint. It'd be very valuable to people in sort of getting an idea as to what makes you tick and what your approach is going to be. I think we've covered a whole range of different topics today, a lot of politics in there as well. But I actually think that the interplay between organizations like ARLA and politics, it cannot be understated. It needs that. Really, we need more action, and we need to be able to put more pressure on government to hear us. I'm hoping we can keep a housing minister for longer than a week. At the moment, I think we said it best before. It's a government that's still making its mind up about where it sits on various different things. But I think I think that also sends a message, by the way, Darshan, to our industry, that when you sort of only keep somebody in that post as very temporary, it's like saying, look, this is the post nobody really wants to deal with. This is the thing that we're not going to invest any time in getting to know you properly. And it feels like that's been the story for the longest time that I can remember.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Look, it's all about, like I said before, it's about people understanding and getting it. A lot of the housing ministers in the past have actually only stayed for a little while. And that's a shame, really, because by the time we build our relationship with them, they're ready to go and move on to other parts. But one of the things that I've been able to do over the past few years is some of the housing ministers, Christopher Pincher, and you've got Robert Jenrick as well. Through my political connections, I've been able to catch up with them and give and pitch our where we stand for Propertymark as well, especially with the renters reform bill as well. But yeah, let's hope. Wishing Stuart, Andrew, all the very best of luck, and let's bend his ear.
Okay, great. Darshan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, David, Vince, and thank you for Kerfuffle as well.
Pleasure.